Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and join our storytelling family. If you enjoy deep emotional stories that reveal the hidden moments of life, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Because tonight's story is about loneliness, unexpected care, and the quiet moment when someone realizes their life doesn't have to end just because love once did. Now let's begin. Claire had just reached over and turned off the lamp beside her bed when the first sound echoed through the house. At first it was faint, just a dull thump from somewhere downstairs. The kind of noise a house sometimes makes when pipes shift or wood settles in the cold night air. She closed her eyes again, ready to drift into sleep. But then another sound followed. Voices. Low at first. Then laughter. Real laughter. Bright, careless, full of energy. Claire slowly opened her eyes again and stared up at the ceiling, the darkness stretching above her like a quiet ocean. The soft glow of the digital clock beside her bed read 12:17 a.m. She exhaled slowly and pulled the pillow over her ear, hoping the sound would fade. It didn't. More laughter drifted up through the floorboards. Footsteps. Something dropping. The muffled excitement of young voices refusing to surrender to sleep. And suddenly Claire remembered. Ethan. Her stepson had come home that afternoon from college. When Ethan had arrived earlier that day, the house had felt different immediately. Alive. He had stepped through the door taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader, his presence filling the hallway with a kind of youthful energy the house hadn't known in a long time. He smelled like fresh soap and cold autumn air. He had hugged her tightly and said, "Hey Claire. I missed this place." Those words alone had warmed her heart. But Ethan hadn't come alone. Standing behind him was his best friend Mark, holding a duffel bag and smiling with an easy confidence that seemed to brighten the entire room. "Hi, Mrs. Carter," Mark had said politely. "Hope you don't mind an extra guest." Claire had laughed softly. Of course not. The more the merrier. That evening Claire had cooked dinner. Not because anyone asked her to, but because cooking had once been the heart of the home. She made pasta with homemade tomato sauce, garlic bread, a fresh salad. Simple things. But when Ethan and Mark sat down at the table, they ate like boys who hadn't tasted real home cooking in months. They laughed. They teased each other. They argued about basketball teams. They told embarrassing stories from high school. Their shoulders bumped. Their voices rose and fell with excitement. Claire mostly listened, smiling quietly as she refilled their plates. The house felt warm. Too warm almost. Because for 3 years, it had been quiet. Very quiet. And for the first time in a long while, the house had actually felt that way. 3 years earlier, Claire's husband Daniel had died. The accident had happened so suddenly that sometimes it still didn't feel real. One phone call. One hospital visit. And suddenly the life they had built together was gone. After that, the house had changed. Dinner became silent. The television sometimes stayed on late just to fill the empty space. Ethan eventually left for college. And Claire remained alone. Working long hours at the small neighborhood bookstore. Coming home. Cooking simple meals. Going to bed early. Repeating the same quiet routine every day. She told everyone she was fine. And in many ways, she was. But the truth was something else entirely. She had simply learned how to survive the silence. Now that silence was gone. Downstairs, another burst of laughter exploded. Claire sighed and slowly sat up in bed. Her back ached from the long workday. All she wanted was sleep. But the sound of youth refused to fade. She slipped her feet into soft slippers and quietly walked toward the bedroom door. The hallway was dim. Only a faint glow from the living room stretched up the staircase. She opened her door slightly, just enough to hear more clearly. Downstairs Mark's voice rang out. "You still can't beat me, man." Ethan laughed. "Keep dreaming." Something soft flew across the room. Probably a pillow. More footsteps followed. The sound of a video game controller clicking rapidly. Claire shook her head slightly. Boys. Even grown ones. She stepped quietly into the hallway and began walking toward the staircase. Halfway down she paused. From that angle she could see the living room. Ethan and Mark were sitting on the couch leaning forward intensely. A video game flashed bright colors across the television screen. The light flickered across their faces. They looked so young, so alive. Suddenly Ethan glanced toward the staircase. "Hey," he said quietly. "Lower your voices." Claire froze in the shadows. Mark turned slightly. "Why?" Ethan nodded toward the upstairs hallway. "Claire goes to bed early." The words hit her unexpectedly. Not painfully, just softly, like a gentle reminder of who she had become. Someone who slept early. Someone predictable. Someone quiet. Mark leaned back and nodded. "Got it." He muted the television. The room immediately became calmer, and what started as loud gaming turned into quiet conversation. Claire hadn't planned to listen. Really. She intended to go back to bed. But the house carried whispers upward through the thin walls like secrets floating through the night. Mark spoke first. "She looks tired." Claire's breath caught. Ethan sighed. "She works too much." Silence followed. Then Mark's voice came again. "She's alone all the time, man." Claire felt her heart begin to beat faster. Ethan didn't answer right away. Finally he said quietly, "I know." Mark continued, his voice softer now. "That's not good." Ethan exhaled. "I see it every day." Claire remained frozen on the staircase, her fingers gripping the wooden railing. "She won't say anything," Ethan said slowly. "But I can tell." Claire swallowed hard. "She still keeps Dad's jacket in the closet," Ethan added. "Like he might come back." Tears immediately filled Claire's eyes. She hadn't known Ethan noticed that. Downstairs Mark spoke gently. "That's really hard." Ethan nodded. "She thinks she has to stay strong." Mark responded quietly. "She doesn't have to." Then he said something that stayed with Claire for the rest of the night. "She deserves more than just surviving." The word hung in the air. Surviving. Claire had told herself she was living. She worked. She paid bills. She smiled at neighbors. She kept the house clean. She supported Ethan. But suddenly she wondered, was that really living? Or was she simply surviving? After a moment of silence, Mark spoke again. "You know something?" "What?" Ethan asked. "Your stepmom is beautiful." Claire's breath stopped. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Mark quickly added, "Not in a weird way. I just mean, she doesn't seem to realize it." Claire gripped the blanket around her shoulders. Her heart was beating unevenly now. Ethan finally said quietly, "She used to laugh more. Before everything. Before the hospital. Before the funeral. Before sympathy cards. Before the bed turned cold." Mark replied softly, "She still laughs. Just not for herself." Eventually the conversation ended. The television turned off. Lights clicked dark. Doors closed. The house returned to silence. But Claire couldn't sleep. She sat up in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every word she had overheard. For years she had built emotional walls around herself. Not because she wanted to, but because losing Daniel had taught her something terrifying. Happiness could disappear in a single moment. And loving someone meant risking that pain again. So she chose safety, routine, distance. But tonight something had cracked inside that protective wall. And the strange thing was, the crack didn't hurt. It felt like light. Claire slowly stood up and walked across the room toward the mirror. Moonlight streamed through the window and illuminated her reflection. She studied herself carefully. Soft lines near her eyes. A tired expression. But she didn't look old. Her brown hair still fell naturally over her shoulders. Her posture was still strong. When had she decided she was invisible? When had she stopped wearing dresses? Stopped putting on lipstick? Stopped trying? Mark's words echoed in her mind again. "You know she's beautiful, right?" Claire shook her head gently. "He was just being polite," she whispered. But her heart refused to believe that completely. Standing by the window, Claire watched the quiet street outside. A street light glowed softly on the corner. Cars passed occasionally. Life continued. People fell in love. People started over. And suddenly a dangerous thought appeared in her mind. Why not me? The question frightened her. Because starting over meant letting go. And letting go sometimes felt like betrayal. But that night, for the first time in 3 years, Claire allowed herself to imagine a different future. Not something dramatic. Not reckless. Just simple happiness. Dinner with someone who asked how her day went. Laughter that belonged to her again. A hand reaching across the table. Her chest tightened with emotion. But this time the feeling wasn't grief. It was something new. Something fragile. Something called possibility.